Welcome to Talk-Jitsu with host Uki Mike, Joey Boretski, and me, Jordan Preisinger from Jordan Teaches Jiujitsu. Today we have a great episode for you guys, and we'll start off with talking about something cool that we're doing today at the gym, which is another prank video. So what we're doing is, the last time we did a prank where there was a black belt disguised as a white belt, and he pranked the class by, beating up the everyone, and they were wondering, what's going on here. But this time we're doing the same thing, except for we're getting our black belts to wear white belts, and we're actually tricking the guy that thinks he's tricking the class. So it's like the, Inception kind of. So I'm curious to see how that's going to go.
The old double cross.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, what we should do, though. Should we do, a lot of, drilling? Not drilling, situational sparring and stuff like that? Or do you think we should, roll lots? I haven't planned this very well. I don't know. I procrastinate so much. I haven't really figured this out. So now I can use you guys to help me.
What about, last time, King of the Hill? That was great.
Yeah, we'll probably do.
Something
I think
like
that'd be good for sure. Do you think we should get other belts against him, or just put only the black belts disguised as the white belts?
How many black belts do we have?
I think
that are going to be here.
Yeah, I think 6 coming. We're missing a couple that I really wanted to be here, but I think 6 or 7 maybe.
You got to if they're wearing white belts, you got to put a couple stripes on some of them so that it's not super obvious that they're all brand stripes, new, crisp white belts.
Yeah, that's what I plan to do. Just a couple stripes, 1 or 2. And but I don't really care if it's super obvious either, because I think that makes it really funny too. I don't know, because Arthur, he was the one who did it last time. He made it pretty obvious because he was doing the most advanced stuff, Kiss of the Dragon and stuff like that. And people criticize, they're it's so obvious. But I think that adds to the funny factor, because I think that if you were to go easy on them, then it's not as shocking. It's not as interesting. At least I think.
Well, looking through the outside at a video that's named, a white belt dressed as black, or black belt dressed as white belt. Yeah, of course it looks obvious. But when you're right in the middle of it, you can't figure it. I couldn't figure it out, not till afterwards. Anyways, none of us did.
Yeah, that's the thing. People don't really understand, because people are saying, people in the comments, oh, it's fake, this and that, or it's so obvious. But you don't, when you're not expecting a prank, you're not thinking you're just thinking what's going on here. You're not oh, this is a prank. It's so obvious. What are you doing?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially you see all these people be like, oh, I knew right away, and it's yeah, no shit, man. The title gave it away. We literally told you. Of course you knew. But then you'll go to a no-gi open mat, and those same people who are oh, I could tell right away. They'll roll with someone and be like, is that guy a brown belt? And you're he's a white belt, buddy, or he's a blue belt. You don't notice when it's no-gi without the belt. But, of course, when we tell you there's a prank and this guy's actually a black belt and we put a white belt on him, it's yeah, I knew all along. Okay, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But that video's got, I think, 3.1 million views I checked today, and most of the comments are very, very good. But there's one guy that thought that it was cruel to trick us. Do you remember that? Yeah,
there's a couple of people that said it was cruel, it was mean, and or people are oh, what's the joke? It's not funny. But everyone has a different opinion on what's funny.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought it was funny. I thought the first prank with Alex Van Mouse, the original one, I thought that was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that was great. I love that one.
And I think it was paying homage to that, you know. So I thought about doing it no-gi, but in reality, it kind of happens all the time, where you roll somebody and they're good, and then you don't know they might actually be a blue or purple belt, but they're good. So
yeah,
I feel
it's hard to tell a no-gi, man. No-gi is that's my favorite part about no-gi open mats and stuff, is you'll roll with a guy and you have that moment after where you're I wonder what belt that guy was, but I don't want to ask, but I'm really curious.
Yeah, a couple times I've screwed up in my head, and I've asked them, and then I've been what belt are you, blue belt or purple or something like that, and then they're a brown. I'm crap, I should not have said any belt, any examples, but it just came out, and as it was coming out, I'm thinking, why did you say that? And that's really frustrating, and I feel bad.
You always got to guess higher. Always have to go if you think he's a blue belt, ask if he's a purple. If you think he might be a purple, ask if he's a brown, because they'll take it as a compliment if you're wrong, but if you're right, you're just right.
I usually just ask how long you've been training, and then I can kind of suss it out from that. So
yeah, a lot of times I ask beforehand now, just because I want to know I don't know, it's just good to have some context going into it, like how hard should I go, or like what should I do? Like I don't really care about, I'll like twister somebody, no problem, with their white belt, or wrist lock them, but sometimes they complain, which is unbelievable to me. Like, you're mad I submitted you with like a wrist lock, like what's the big deal?
Well, I got a guy in the second class last night, I got him with a twister, and he thought it was awesome. I went really slow, it was really controlled, I mean, nobody got hurt. And you can break somebody's arm in an arm bar if you go too fast, right? I mean, you just got to have control.
Yeah, exactly. I think it makes it more fun being able to do everything. But yeah, Joey, your interview with Kade Ruotolo went really well. And one thing that stood out was really interesting to me is when you asked him about the ecological approach. And he said that that he doesn't do a lot of static drilling, but he did say that he said you need to do like a little bit to learn it. Not that he's right or wrong, but he said like a little bit of static drilling to learn it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That it's kind of like an anti-eco thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really interesting. I think, especially with these high-level athletes, I think a lot of them employ this type of training, whether or not they realize it. I mean, one of the interesting things about like the ecological training method and like constraint-led approach is you can do it and not know you're doing it. Your coach could be doing it and not know he's doing it. Like a lot of what we do in jiu-jitsu and have always done is kind of fitting into that mold. Like situational sparring is really loosely constraint-led approach. I mean, I'm putting you in a position, I'm giving you constraints. Now, is it optimal way to constrain it? Probably not, but it is a form of that. And I think it was really interesting to hear Kade say, like, that's mostly how he trains his live. And, like, when him and his brother are trying to learn, like, I think he was talking about leg lock defense, where, like, put me in it, and I'm just going to move. I'm going to figure out problems. We're just going to practice from here and fight. He said something like, I think he said sometimes you do, like, a couple reps to get the feel for how you have to move, which I'm not against people doing. As a coach, I don't think it's necessary, but obviously as an athlete, he's in charge of himself and what he wants to do. If he wants to do that and then move into live, sure. I mean, that if he finds that beneficial, he finds that beneficial.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, in eco context, what it's doing is giving you knowledge about the movement solution, and also directing your attention to what you need to do, and also building confidence and what motivation to actually go for it. So actually, a good example was, I learned an overtie throw by online. Like, I saw it and I thought this is really cool. I want to try that. So like I did a couple dead reps on Nikki, and then I taught the class it. And just teaching them and doing those dead reps, that just gave me the confidence and motivation. That's like, okay, this is a really good movement solution. So, and then I went and did it. Like, I've been using it all the time now, and it's, it still fits within ecological dynamics of like how that was beneficial to me. And like, other people in the class too, like Mike and Nikki, they're like, oh wow, this works really good. I never would have thought of this on my own. So I think that sometimes the eco purists, they don't really, I don't know, they think that it's wrong to give any sort of movement solution because they think that it might, I don't know, it might make you less of a problem solver and more of like a move doer. But I think that giving movement solutions can make you more of a problem solver, because it gives you more movement solutions.
Yeah, I mean, smart grapplers and smart people in general, which, like, I like to tell my students, like, the goal isn't to be the most athletic or the fastest or the strongest. I mean, these are things you can do, and these are approaches you can take to try to be the best grappler possible, but they're not necessarily recreatable, and they're not necessarily sustainable. I mean, if you have a style that's like, I'm just faster than everyone, it's like, okay, well, what happens when you're 45 or 50 and you're not anymore? I like to tell my guys, let's be smart. Let's think through problems. Let's solve problems. And smart grapplers, when you give them a move, they're not just going to take that and go, okay, I'm going to do it with these exact steps every single time. They're going to take the thing I've shown them, and they're going to go, okay, why did this work? What was working about it? What problem did this move solve? And how can I use like the ideas given to me with this move to solve similar problems? So I really don't think, when purists are like, there's a zero value in showing someone how to do something. Like when I explain my games or my task-based games to my students, like when we do it, sometimes I'll show examples of like, hey, I'm trying to, you're trying to do this. Here's one or two ways you could accomplish it. Don't particularly care which way you accomplish it, but here's a couple examples of how I would personally go about solving this problem. I'm pretty clear with them. Like, don't just try to mimic what I did, but use what I showed you possibly as a guide for how you could approach that problem.
Yeah, I agree, because I think when people do, they like see a demonstration, or even if they drill it statically, they're still going to self-organize, right? So like, for example, Nikki does, like my wife, she'll knee slide from, even when someone has a knee shield, which is not something I'd like recommend as someone to do, just because it creates a lot of space. But she's good at doing that. So she's self-organized different movement solutions, but based off of like, what I've like shown her, right? So you try something and then maybe you adjust it a little bit. It doesn't mean that you need to be like 100% focused on, it needs to be exactly like this. I think that a lot of like the eco-purists, they kind of argue using the worst examples of like the traditional method and the best examples of eco. Because like the worst examples of the traditional method would be like a 15-step type thing, which is like impossible to remember. And during those steps, not like the mechanics not talked about, right? Because a good teacher will have few steps and it'll be all about the mechanics, not just, oh, I put my hand here, and then they're focused on getting their hand there. If you talk about the mechanics, there's different ways of achieving those mechanics. And again, you can self-organize and do things differently as you're trying to do it. So yeah, I've been learning a lot about eco lately, because I realized how much like Dunning-Kruger I had of like not really, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know as much as I thought I did. But at the same time, I kind of realized that some of the arguments I had were not necessarily wrong. I just didn't necessarily frame them the right way. I didn't have like the knowledge to really explain what I meant. So yeah, the more I learn, the more I think that it's okay to show movement solutions, because what we've been doing lately is we did in April all like 100% CLA. I didn't stray from that because I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. But in May so far, I've been doing more of a hybrid approach. And I say hybrid only because it's not necessarily pure to the eco purist. But it's still within eco, it's still within eco context, still makes sense. Because, for example, we did some X-Guard CLA, and then after a while, I showed some movement solutions, like my favorite sweeps, and then I was, and then it only took a couple minutes, and I said, go try this, and talk to your partner, get feedback, and then we did more CLA. I said, you don't have to do like what I showed you. Like these are just like movement solutions, so you should try to be creative, and try different things. And I think what really is important is your language as you're coaching, because if you say like you need to do it this way, then yeah, that can be a problem. But if you approach it of this is a way of doing it, then I don't think that necessarily violates eco.
Yeah, I think you said something. You had a little point in there that I want to touch on, because I think this is important to build off for students and for coaches. Is you said you gave them CLA, then you explained how you would solve that problem, and told them this is an example of how you could solve this problem, not the only way to solve it, but an example of what's possible. And then you let them play again. So like this is something I'm really big in my gym. The first couple times we play a game centered around a problem, I will give them no information. We will play the game. Here's the game. Play it. Do what you need to do. Then I can give information, because the students have been in the problem. So like let's say again we're starting from like an X-Guard solution or an X-Guard position, and the goal for the bottom player is maybe to off balance the top player. So I'm trying to get the top player's butt or hands on the mat. Those are, if someone's off balanced, those are the two things that are going to happen. Something has to hit the mat, either the butt or the hands. Top player's trying to stay on top, maybe trying to strip grips or something, however advanced you want to make the game for the top player. I'll just put them in that and go. We're going to do 6 minutes, figure out whatever you can figure out. And now we'll talk about like, okay, when I'm in this X-Guard, if my legs are just super close to me, I'm not extending this guy. So now what I want us to do is go back, play the same game, but I'm going to focus on trying to stretch this guy's legs as far apart as I can, and also now try to off balance him. And everyone will go at the end of the second game, that was a lot easier. I'm like, yeah, isn't it interesting how when we stretch people's base out, it's harder for them to keep balance? And then maybe we'll play a game where I'm trying to use my knees to pull them super close and grab their ankle. But putting them in the problem first, letting them play and get a feel for what's going on. Then when you explain, okay, now, maybe like I don't show moves personally. I don't have any problem with gyms that do. Like when you say you show it, sure, that's fine. there's obviously like different ways to get around these problems as coaches of how to like explain information to people, because at some point you do need to give people information. So like when you show it after, they've been in the situation, they've got the information, they struggled with it. You know, maybe you're showing like stretch them out, sit up, wrestle up kind of style sweep from X guard or something like that, where you like shelf the leg on the shoulder. They were in that problem. They were having it. When you show it, they go, oh, that's interesting. I was having a hard time moving the guy. If I just push with my legs, now his weight is light, I can start to sit up. Because they have that information of what it felt like to be in there. If you just show someone that sweep without them ever having played X guard before, they're not going to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, how it feels to be in that situation, why I need to do these things that I'm showing.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. And, you know, I think everyone can do their classes the way they want to do them. And when I say like what I think, I don't want to like sound like I'm critiquing others like that are purists, but like research does show that demonstration has value. And, you know, I was listening to a podcast from Nicola Hodges. She's a researcher and professor from University of British Columbia, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, she was saying that demonstration has a lot of value, again, for confidence building, motivation, and you know, that kind of stuff's really important. And what's really helps is that when you see something, like you see your peers do it or you see an expert do it, that's very helpful. And then when you visualize yourself doing it, then it's even more helpful. So those two things combined can really motivate you and give you confidence to try those movement solutions. So, you know, like I feel like Greg Sodders specifically is really like, you don't want to show them movement solutions at all. But the research doesn't necessarily say that. You know, ecological dynamics, it's more of like how people learn, more so than it is like you have to coach like this, you know, and you use how people learn to direct how you coach. But there's a lot more to it than, there's a lot to it. Like, you know, humans are very complicated people. It's not just your body moving, interacting. It's like a lot of thinking too. And, you know, people have, past experiences and whatnot. Like there's just a lot going on. And one thing I think was interesting she said too was that, the research isn't there to conclude 100% that ecological dynamics is like the way to go, and that there's no value in any sort of IP perspective. I found that really interesting because people that are purist of eco, they're very much like, this is the way, the science says this, and any sort of like, disagreement is just against the science, and that IP and ecological dynamics are 100% like incompatible. But I mean, I think there's tools and perspectives we can take from both of them.
Oh, it's IP
sure.
again, sorry.
So IP is
information processing.
Yeah.
And CLA is, I'm just trying to, for the audience.
Yeah, I see. I used to think IP meant indirect perception, but yeah, it's information processing.
Okay.
But and what that means is that you must process in your brain before you do things. But it doesn't mean that within ecological dynamics there's no information processing going on. Meaning that like you're not thinking at all. Like there is cognitive things happening.
Yeah, I mean, like clearly, anytime we think, neurons are firing. The information processing style is more as if like. It treats the brain essentially as if it's a computer, where I can put in a piece of code and then the computer instantly knows what that code is and what to do with it. 100% IP, which I think even like people who aren't necessarily 100% aboard the ecological dynamics train agree that brains are not 100% information processing machines. I mean, I think anyone in jiu-jitsu would agree that just because I show you once how to do a move, you don't instantly know how to do that move. If anyone wants to argue me on that point, feel free. You're going to look like an idiot at the end of that conversation.
But sorry, Joy, I don't mean to interrupt, but you do gain knowledge about it, right? So that's where you need to differentiate.
Yeah, and the information processing model is more of like, let's say I'm trying to do a berimbolo. I show you a berimbolo and explain the 5 steps. If pure information processing was exactly how we learned, without ever having done that motion or been in that situation, you would instantly know how to do it and be good at doing it. And we just know that that's not a factual statement.
But at the same time, I think that's too much of a, I don't know, that's too bold of a statement, because within IP, information processing, the way they explain that it works is first you're cognitive. So it's like 3 steps. You're cognitive, and then associative, and then autonomous. So like, I'll read it out here. I suck at reading. So cognitive, a high element of cognitive load where lots of errors are visible within movement executions at this stage. And then you go to the next stage where a player may grasp the basics and reduce variability in movements through repetition, reducing cognitive load so the brain has a greater capacity to process more information. And then it goes to autonomous. Executing skill involves little conscious thought as players perform skills without thinking, freeing up a greater amount of cognitive capacity to take on harder or complex skills. So they're not necessarily saying that once you like are taught something that you can do it. Like there's 3 steps in that to become autonomous where you don't need to think about it.
Yeah, which like that definition there is actually interesting, because my experience using ecological dynamics is absolutely not through those 3, like the steps they say you take to learn a skill. I have absolutely not experienced that teaching my students. Like I have students who I have never taught anything to, and they're actually quite adept at performing movements without what we would call like errors, because they're not trying to repeat a process. They're trying to solve a problem, and it's going to look different. So like from that definition right away, I'm like, oh, that's not been my experience as a coach. But I will say I don't believe that there is zero value in performing something or seeing something performed. Like when I teach my classes and I explain, like, let's say we're playing a back control game or whatever. Like I'll use a pretty standard example of like one person starts on the other person's back. Your only goal is to maintain chest to back connection. And I'll explain to my students, like, you know, like, what is chest to back connection? Imagine we were wearing hockey jerseys right now. We're Canadian. Most people have seen a hockey jersey. They've got the numbers on the back. I want to cover those numbers with my chest. That's what I'm looking to do. That's chest to back connection. I'm just trying to maintain that. I can grip, do whatever I need to do. This person's either trying to get their back to the mat, because if their back is on the mat, I am not on their back, or turn to face me. And I'll grab my partner. I'll say, all right, go, like, try and do what you got to do. And I'll hold that chest to back connection and kind of explain to my students, like, see, I'm staying connected. I can use whatever grips I need to do, show some various grips, stay connected. All right, guys, does that make sense to you guys? Go ahead, do your game, whatever you need to do. There is a value in demonstrating the game. But what I don't do with my students is go, all right, guys, there is one specific way to hold this chest to back connection. I need to grip here and here, and I need to hold like this. Because that's not true. We know that's not true. Anyone who's grappled and had back control knows there's not one way to hold back control.
But I don't think that any coaches are really saying that. You know what I mean? Because I feel like it's, again, using the worst examples of the traditional method, right? Because like coaches wouldn't say like you have to do it this way. Well, some would, like the bad ones, but you know the good ones would say there's different ways of doing this. This is a way of doing it. And I think that just because you know the objective doesn't mean that you know you can't. That when you try other movement solutions, you're going to focus on that only. So like, you know, just say like the back example, right? You need to keep chest to back connection, right? You want to strangle them, choke them, but I mean, or put their limbs at extension. But you could also be introduced like a thunder lock, which is a shoulder lock, and I started using it just recently after seeing it, and I already know the objective, right? But that wasn't apparent to me. That affordance wasn't apparent to me. Like I didn't see that affordance. Oh, you could like, you know, attack their shoulder from the back, right? So yeah, I mean, you can know the objectives and be a versatile grappler, but then also learn other movement solutions without being like 100% directed. Okay, this is the only thing I'm going to do. Like this is the way to do it.
No, I agree, and that's why like I, as a black belt, like I'm a relatively adept black belt. I watch a lot of footage because I want to get ideas and see. What I don't do is go to a bunch of people and go, "Can you teach me a move, please? Like, show me the 5 steps to do this," because I don't find any value in that. Most people, once they get really comfortable with grappling and how to move their bodies and how to solve these problems, at least in my experience, they can kind of see a move and start to internalize, what am I going to be doing to accomplish that? I don't need someone to show me 7 steps. I just show me what the move looks like, show me what you did, and I'll figure out how to recreate that because I know the end goal and I'm going to figure out how to get there. But to your earlier point of like coaches saying things, I think a lot of good coaches wouldn't say this is the only way to do things, but to keep with the back example, this is something I hear from a lot of coaches is never cross your ankles, bad to cross your ankles, don't cross your ankles. And that's just not true. There are plenty of times from the back when it is valid or even good to cross your ankles. But it's a little bit of a generality, so coaches say never do that. And I've had like brown and black belts that I've rolled with who say the same thing. They're like, oh, you can never cross your ankles. And I'm like, really? Because give me your back. I'm going to cross my ankles. Watch. Get out of here. And they can't. And they're like, well, my coach said you should never cross your ankles. And I'm like, you don't understand what's happening here, though. You're just repeating something someone told you without really understanding why what's happening here is happening.
I agree. I find that's super annoying when people say don't cross your ankles, especially like if I'm rolling like on YouTube and I cross my ankles, and I got these people saying like, you know, you're doing something wrong, you know, like, oh, I'm wrong for doing it. Well, I didn't get ankle locked, so obviously it's fine, you know. So yeah, I agree with that. I think, and that's an example of, yes.
Arm bars are another great example. How many times have you heard someone say you can't cross your feet when you arm bar? It's like, well,
oh yeah,
I'm 99% sure I can because I've done it to many, many people. But when you understand why a coach in the first place said don't cross your ankles, because if you cross your ankles, your knees splay, you lose control of the shoulder. It's very easy for people to escape. There are ways around that. And there are times when it's beneficial for me to cross my ankles. And I think there's a lot of people out there who don't actually play with this stuff. They just hear it once and they go, okay, I'm never going to do that. I'm going to tell everyone never to do that. Whereas a better solution would be, all right, guys, cross your ankles from here and see if this is easier or harder. You know, try it. Play.
I agree. I find that really annoying because I've argued with people many times on the YouTube or TikTok, like, oh, you shouldn't cross your ankles, you know, during armbar. Like, yes, you can. Calm down. But again, I think that's an example of a poor coach, like not a very good coach, to say something like that. You must do it this way, or you can never do this. But I think you could take examples of poor ecological coaches, like people that are poor, that do a bad job of designing games and a bad job of explaining what the objectives are. And that's that's a skill that takes time to develop. I'm still getting better at that. But like, yeah, that could be criticism of, ecological dynamics. But like, again, it's like the good coaches aren't going to do that. And the same thing with like the more IP method, the good coaches aren't going to say like, you need to do it this way. So like when we criticize like one side or the other, you know, it's like, I don't think we should use like the worst examples to like make our points, which is usually how arguments work in the first place. But we should try to avoid that, I think, at least. But
I agree.
Yeah,
I think that's actually a point. Like, I think I'd like to just build off for a second and clarify something. Is like ecological dynamics is not some sort of like get out of jail card for coaching. There is still a skill. There is understanding how to convey the information in the task-based games that you need to give to your students. There is conveying the invariant situations. There's conveying the things that you want them to pay attention to, the affordances available. This isn't some sort of methodology where you can know nothing about grappling and all of a sudden be a world-class coach. You need to understand what is happening in all of these positions and situations so that, one, you can design proper games to elicit the behaviors you need, and two, so that when people do have problems, you can explain and help them through these problems. I've been working with a lot of people on Instagram. In a couple of the episodes, I've said, shoot me a message if you want to try this stuff. I've had probably 2 or 3 dozen people reach out to me who are interested in trying this. And I offer the same thing to everyone. Give me a position that you want me to make a game for you. And I will explain to you how I would gamify that position, what I would have both players do, and then do that. You make a game, send it to me, and I'll help you kind of fix and tweak the language. And what I notice is most people's first attempt, the game is very unclear. Certain things are not, or they're very ambiguous. It's very vague. I wouldn't know if I was the student. I wouldn't know exactly what they want me to do. I might not even approach it the way I know they're trying to get me to approach the problem. So it is very important when we teach, no matter what methodology you teach with, like your language is important. What you say is important. Every word that comes out of your mouth as an instructor is information for the student. And if you're not clear about what you want, you're going to get chaos.
Exactly. Everything you do has an effect, and it's what effect does it have? Does it have a positive effect, or does it detract from what you're actually trying to accomplish? So yeah, I think that's important whether in either style. But yeah, back to your earlier point, is I find it interesting, like, you know, I've heard you say too before that static drilling is not the way people learn. Like, you don't learn that way. But, you know, again, it directs your attention and it gives you, I guess, awareness of affordances. And so like using that's what builds skill, because you can't like, do something statically and all of a sudden you have that skill, and like nobody would argue otherwise, but because it directs your attention to it and gives you knowledge about it, then you can gain knowledge of it, which is skill. So I feel like it's kind of like saying like, you can't build a house by building a foundation. It's like, well, that's true. Like a foundation is not a whole house, but it's still part of a house. So, I mean, it's not to say like, you need to have knowledge about something before you can do it. But I don't think necessarily it's fair to say that you can't build skill and build knowledge of something because you get knowledge of it. Because even you said that you get ideas from other people.
And I think that's like super important, is like to get ideas. The big thing I'll say here, and like this is something I've tried to explain to a lot of my students, and I think people understand, is, and I don't know if this is like, if like the eco scientists would like the way I'm about to approach this, or if they'll disagree with me, but if I'm being honest, I really don't care. I think what I'm doing is working in my gym. My students trust me, and it's working for me. So if it's not 100% right, I don't particularly care. I'm doing it. I'm not trying to teach people how to do a move, if that makes sense. Like, you can watch a move, and I could get them to statically drill a move, and like, I won't actually disagree that people would get better at doing a move if they statically drilled it enough times and then practiced it live and did some combination of the two. You would definitely get better at that move. That's not what I want for my students. What I'm trying to teach my students how to do is, in general, solve problems. I don't need them to know how to do, let's say, like if we were standing, I don't care if any of my students ever learn how to do a double leg takedown. If we're standing and my students can take everyone they roll with down using single leg takedowns, why do I need the double leg? If you can solve the problem of put my partner's ass on the mat, and I can do that without a double leg, I don't actually need to learn how to do the double leg. You can solve the problem. Sure, I could get them to statically drill a bunch of double legs, a bunch of reps. I could get them to do it in a live game where the goal is to capture both legs, and I could make them better at double legs, but it's not a necessary function.
Yeah, I think I hear that statement a lot from the ecological dynamics guys, and there's a good point to it. And but I also think that like the more tools you have, the more you can problem solve. Like I think at least. So for example, like I'm pretty good at stand up. Like I think at least my wrestling's pretty good. But when I learn different movement solutions, I'm becoming more of a problem solver because now I have more tools. So even though I could get people down just fine before, these new tools are helping me a lot. So, I can do self-learning myself. I can look online and whatnot. Like I do that, but assuming that students do that, and not everyone's going to, right? So I think exposing people to different movement solutions isn't necessarily, well, it's not a bad thing at all. And I think that everyone has like different goals for their room, which I think is totally fine if you want to do it your way. But and if like the purists want to do it their way, but where I think it's kind of goes wrong is where they say like it's useless or detracting or like a bad thing if other people do it their way by showing some movement solutions.
No, and I should clarify something. It's not that like I don't show those students double legs. I don't play games that would elicit the behavior of double legs. So we actually do play games where it's like, my goal here is to get a wrap around both knees, or I'm starting in a single leg and my goal is to grab the other knee. These are behaviors that lead to double leg or double leg like takedowns. What I mean is if a student says, I have a hard time with that, and I don't particularly like that takedown, cool, play the game, but you don't actually need to get super adept at that movement solution. If you're like, every time I get the one leg, I can just take people down. Cool. When we play the game, your goal, you have to do the game. You've got to try to get the second leg. They're building the skill, the knowledge of that thing, that it is there. It is an option. It's something I could do, but they've realized through playing the game, they're like, this is something that I don't like doing. I don't move well. I don't feel comfortable doing this. They're like, there's a lot of things I don't personally like doing. Like, I tell my guys, like, if we're doing wrestling, for example, like my best takedowns are takedowns I would absolutely never teach another human being how to do because they're not easy. They're not reproducible. Like my favorite takedown is a fireman's carry. That is maybe the riskiest throw in jiu-jitsu. Like that is a terrible, terrible move to make your A game. I like it. It works really well for my body and the way I like to grapple. So, I'll show my students, we'll play a game where getting into that position might be the goal, or, finishing from there is the goal, but I'm not going to force them to learn that takedown. Now, if someone's like, hey, every time I get here, I'm getting here super easy. I'm getting the takedown from here super easy. Cool. This is great. That's fantastic. You got a solution, man. But it doesn't have to be that one.
Yeah, exactly. I find it interesting because with CLA, like the Purist, they say you don't want to funnel someone into a particular movement solution. But even though sometimes they do, if it's like an arm bar for mount, for example, Greg's game, that is funneling into an arm bar when you can do other things, but other things they don't want you to. So, for example, like I mentioned the fake guard pull ankle pick, and, the answer was, you don't need that if you achieve your function, which is true, 100%. I agree with you, but at the same time, it can be helpful to be able to do that, right? And developing a game specifically for that, it's probably a waste of time. Where if you just show it, they do a couple reps, they can probably do it within the game without having to constrain that game.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like saying a fake guard pull ankle pick, I'll kind of break down how I would approach this situation. Like at the end of the day, what is a fake guard pull ankle pick? It's an ankle pick takedown. The same way if I my setup for an ankle pick is I like to do it off snap downs. I like to really snap people down so that they're stepping forward to not go down to all fours, and then an ankle super close for me to get. These are two different ways I can attract this ankle. So if I was playing a game, I might say, all right, guys, the task for one player is to grab your partner's leg below the shin, or below the middle of the shin line. So at the ankle or foot, whatever you can grab down there. And now when I explain the game, I'll say there are a couple different ways we can do that. I'm not just going to say, grab the ankle, go, have fun. People are going to be like, how the fuck do I even begin to play this game? I don't even know where I would start. I'd say, I need the ankle to be in reach. I can pull him towards me, grab the ankle. I can sit back to bring him towards me, grab the ankle. I can just push him and run at him until he gets light and grab the ankle. I'll show a couple different ways like, Dave, these are strategies we can use. The goal is to grab the ankle. I don't care how we do it. If you have no idea of how to do it, these are a couple strategies I'll use. Different ways we can do it as I demonstrate the game. Now go, have fun. And some people will gravitate towards one strategy. Some people gravitate towards another. I'm not funneling them into a specific strategy of accomplishing this. So I can't speak for Greg. Obviously he'd have to speak for himself, but with the armbar is the goal. I mean, I have to funnel you to an armbar. You got to learn how to do an arm lock at some point. What I wouldn't funnel them into is a specific grip or a specific, you must grip here, you must cross your ankles here. I'd say our goal is to control the arm. I have to funnel you into controlling the arm because you can't armbar if you don't control the arm. How you choose to control the arm with your grips is up to you. I'll show a different example. Maybe I hug like the rear naked choke grip. Maybe I go double wrist grip. There's different ways to control an arm. That's fine to funnel, to let them have the freedom there. But you do, you are right. You do have to funnel them into the move that we are trying to accomplish, which is armbar.
Yeah, exactly. And, in that scenario, yes, you don't funnel them into specific grip breaks and whatnot. But I mean, if you start with double unders, you're funneling them into the S mount that. That's what you're funneling them into 100%. And there's only so many ways to grip that with your legs. I mean, S mount is S mount, right? So, I see your point 100%. But I also, I just think that spending some time with different movement solutions doesn't necessarily violate ecological dynamics, but I think that the community acts like it does, and it makes it really confusing for people that are trying to enter into that community because what they feel like they know to be true. For me, I feel like I know that if I show someone a fake guard pull ankle pick, that's going to help them learn it, right? Because they're gaining knowledge about it and they turn it into knowledge of it, and it just seems like it feels like that's not true or wrong according to the ecological guys, and but it still fits in within how people learn. I mean, it's still explained by ecological dynamics.
Yeah, and I don't think there's no value in that. The only reason I don't do anything like you said, I can show you a grip break, and it might work for 80% of people. Might really like that grip break. The reason I don't show these things is because if I have a room of let's say 40 people. and I'm going to show, all right, here's a way to get an ankle pick. Like maybe it's my snap down way where I snap the guy down and grab the ankle. Well, I'm built like a garden gnome. I'm short and stubby. So that works really well for me. But I got a bunch of tall guys. That might not work well for them. If I'm getting them to rep this and I already know this is not going to work well for them with their body style and the way they move, I'm wasting their time. So I'd rather play a game where I can show the solution, show a couple solutions as examples and let them find the way that works for them. That way, everyone in my room might be doing something different, but they're all finding ways that work for them. I find for me, it's a little bit less, it's a little more efficient. Now, like, again, I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. This is the way I do it. This is the way through my trial and error that I've found works best. Like I've been doing this or experimenting with different levels of CLA, different mixtures of CLA with an IP, built into it. Like you said, a more hybrid approach. I've been doing this for like a year and a half now. This is what I've found has worked best for me. That might change in time. It's really important as a coach. Like you got to know your room. You got to try different things to see what works. And I know there's a lot of coaches out there who are like, well, I don't want to try this because if it doesn't work, my students won't like it. Man, if your students trust you, they'll believe in you. If you're like, hey, I want to try this to see if it's better, it might not be. We might try this for a month, not like it, go back. We might like some aspects of it and keep them and go back. But if you never try anything new, we're never going to figure out what works best for your room. So when you say like, yeah, I think there's value in this, like in your room, there could be. And with the way you explain things, there really could be. Ecological dynamics is a framework. Like if you were building, a car, it's like, this is an engine, this is a chassis, this is like all the stuff, but like you can put different colored panels on them. You can put the handles in different spots. You can have different size tires. This is a framework. You are free to mess around with that framework and build off it, whatever way works for you to get the desired outcome. And I think there's a lot of people like anything who they're too married to this framework is absolute and there is no room for creativity within this framework.
Yeah, it's like what's better, electric car or a gas car, right? I mean, they're two different things, but it depends on what you want. And then you can also have a hybrid car. So like, I think that's pretty interesting. And I think what you said is very true, that it's dependent on your room because like pure ecological dynamics, to say that is the absolute best way to build skill. Like you just be absolute purist. Let people fail as much as they need to gain skill. Don't tell them, don't show any movement solutions. That might be the best way to build skill. Like, I don't know. But if your room isn't, if that's not their first priority, like maybe their priority is having fun or like, maybe they need, they're more recreational. They might need some answers to build that confidence into and motivation where like failing, if they fail too much, that can be detrimental because you want to find the right amount of failure. If it's too easy, they're not going to learn. And if it's too hard, it might be too much where they want to quit. Where like if your room is all about like skill acquisition first and there's competitors, they're going to deal with failure a lot easier, a lot better than recreational people will, right? Because they're just more hardcore about it. So, yeah, like I think it is dependent on your room, and you need to read the room and whatnot, and do what's best makes what you think is best for your room. Where it's like you can do things the way you want to do them, and if the ecological dynamic guys say like, "Oh, that's wrong," it's like, who really cares? If you're building skill and your students are having fun and that's what you want for your room, that's what you need for your room, then it's all good.
Well, I mean, like what's in that situation? Like what's wrong? How do you define something as wrong? How can I prove that this is not valuable in any way? What I would say is maybe like, and I try to do this, and I know I slip up sometimes on the podcast. I don't ever say like showing technique, like, let's say you have an hour class, if you do 45 minutes of technique and 15 minutes of live training. I don't usually say that's wrong. What I try to say is that's suboptimal. In my opinion, I think doing 45 minutes of static technique and then 15 minutes of live work would be suboptimal for learning. I might be wrong. In another room, that actually might be the perfect balance for these people. Maybe this is exactly what that room needs. I don't think that's true, and from what I've seen from my students, I definitely don't think that's true for my room. I mean, I have students who have literally never been shown a technique who are quite a handful to deal with because they're good at solving problems, but there are other people who maybe don't have that skill. And I like to tell people when they try out my gym too, I mean, I'm doing what I'm doing as a coach because I think this is the best way for the majority of my room. There are definitely going to be people who maybe struggle with this method. Maybe it's not a learning thing. Maybe it's people who have like a confidence issue and they're like, I can't handle playing these games and losing 80% of my games. Like mentally, that is too difficult for me. But I'm not going to change my whole practice to accommodate someone's feelings. I joke with my guys every now and then, like when they're performing moves, they're like, I don't care how it feels. I care that it works. Can you if someone's trying an armbar and they're like, that felt funny, but like this armbar feels weird. It feels like I don't have control, but every time I do it, I armbar the guy. I'm like, I don't really care how you feel as long as it's working. Like if it stops working, then we can talk about what's wrong. But if it's not failing, then it's not wrong. We don't need to fix anything. So I find like, if someone came into my room and they're like, I really like training, I like jiu-jitsu, but I can't handle the games, I can't handle the losing, I just want someone to show me what to do all the time. I'll be the first person to say like, hey man, I can recommend you other gyms. Like I can recommend you other places to go who are going to do that for you. I can, there's other gyms in the city. There's other black belts in here that I actually think really highly of. I can direct you towards them. But like, this is how things are going to go in my gym. And maybe it's not for 100% of people. Maybe only 80% of people or 75% of people like it. But the way I look at it is I'm trying to build a culture in my gym and an atmosphere and the way things are done. And people who like that will come to this. And if people don't like it, I'm never going to tell them like, oh, you're stupid, or oh, this is the only way to do it. No, this is just the way I'm doing it, man.
No, I agree 100%, where like you want to build your culture for your gym, what you want, like your objective with the gym, and everyone has different objectives and what they want. So yeah, I think that's great, because sometimes when I talk about what I think is best, I feel like I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing the way other people are doing things, where like I think as a whole, it sounds to me like ecological dynamic guys, they are kind of criticizing the way others are doing things, where I think that's what creates a rift. But I mean, they would say it's the other way around too, where like, someone mentions ecological dynamics on Reddit and then they all go crazy, like getting mad at them. And it's just like, we're on the same side, guys. We're just trying to have a better practice. And Joey, sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do remember you saying that static drills are useless and pointless, and that's not the way people learn, right? Where like, I don't know, I don't think that's true. Like, do you still believe that?
Let me change my wording. Not useless and pointless. Very inefficient and not effective for learning and problem solving. They're great for learning a move. Like if you want to just learn how to perform a motion, I mean, obviously static drill will help you perform a motion. But to me, if you want to be a good grappler, it's not just being able to perform a bunch of motions and then stick these motions together, because things change in a live situation. I mean, a great example, something we touched on earlier, and I think this is a good one because I want to give her credit, because I don't know if we give her enough credit on the podcast, but Nikki with her knee slide, she's done that knee slide to me when my knee shield's in there so many times. And in theory, that shouldn't work. Like that is never how anyone would teach you to do a knee slide. But she's figured out that works for her with the way she moves and her body type, and she's really good at it. But that's not a motion anyone probably taught her how to do, and that she statically repped a bunch of times. She probably just figured out, like, I can just knee slide anyways. I don't care that this thing is in front of me. I'll just knee slide around it. That's a very adaptable grappler, which is what I want from my room. I want guys who have a problem and they can figure out how to get around the problem without me having to show them every possible way to get around every variation of every problem. Like, I'm trying to knee slide. Okay, this is what we can do. Well, what if his grip is here? Now I have to show you another thing. What if his grip is here? I got to show you another thing. Man, I just want to get you guys to be able to go, what is the problem? How do I solve it? I think static drilling for that purpose is very inefficient.
So going back to my overtie example, do you think there would be a more efficient way for me to learn that than, because like, should I have done that through CLA? Like for me specifically, because I learned it, I dead repped it like, I don't know, maybe 5 times. And that gave me the confidence and the motivation to go out and do it, right? So like, I think that was pretty optimal.
Yeah, and again, like for you, I like to tell my guys too, especially like beginners need generality. Advanced people need specificity. When you're first learning, I don't care. Like even from like an IP perspective, again, this is not how I teach. Disclaimer, please no one clip this and post this and think how I teach. If you have a beginner and you're showing him a 15-step move, this is fucking meaningless for this guy. He has no idea what's going on. If you got a beginner and you can show him a 2-step procedure, like, turn on your side, move your hips. Cool. He can probably do that. That's very general. It's very easy. It's very simple. As we get more advanced, things need to get more and more specific because we have that base of skill. Like, you are a very adept wrestler. You can do a lot of things. You understand how your body moves. Showing you a specific option, you're going to learn and understand more deeply how to apply that to a live situation because you have all of that base of experience. If I showed that overtie slide by, you said slide by? Something like that.
Yeah, throw by, yeah.
Throw by, whatever. If you showed that to someone who has never wrestled or grappled, that's going to make zero sense. And they're probably not going to understand how to do it because they don't understand why I would ever need to do this or this situation. You have a deep base of knowledge. You have a deep understanding of grappling and how body mechanics move. Well, I bet you're very similar. When you see a move, like let's say you saw someone show something or you watched a tournament and someone did a move, you probably look at it and go, okay, I kind of understand what's happening here. I understand what he must have been feeling in that motion, how this is going to be, what I'm trying to accomplish with this. For you, that's very valuable because you have that base, especially if you're working with like beginners, though. They don't have that. They don't have that lived experience, as we would like to say. So it means much less to them. So for them, maybe I wouldn't give them that specific thing. But like I even do this with my more advanced students. Again, I'm a new gym. I don't have like a bunch of black belts. I've got some purple belts now. For those guys, I might show them like, hey, here's the game for everybody. And then I'll go over to that group and be like, for you, this is what I want. I'm going to constrain it even more tightly for you. Maybe we're trying to throw by. Sure, if we're trying to throw by from an overtie, I'll be like, everyone else, I don't care how you do the throw by. You can grip, put your hands wherever you need. For him, I'll come around and be like, you are not allowed to grip your partner's arm. You have to do it without that. They're going to be funneled more into that thing. So as people get more advanced, they have to get more and more specific. So the games have to get more and more constrained to get specific behaviors.
Yeah, and in that scenario, what I perceive as the problem is like, I think that maybe you don't need a game for the throw by to emerge, where you could have a more general game and show them that movement solution, and then they might use it, or they don't have to. But you're not constraining them within that game. But yeah, I mean, just difference of opinion. But
that's a perfectly valid answer to that. Like, I could, when I'm demonstrating the game, I could just show a throw by from an overtie. Hey, here's an option, guys. This is something we can do. We could do this. We could do that. Go. Now be free. And that's in their mind. Okay, I could try that. The advanced students might try it, and they might go, I like that, but I was getting stuck here. And I'll go, okay, let's see it. Let's see you try. Like, get in the situation. Try that move for me. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I want you to, focus on this. Focus on this detail. Focus on, this affordance, or this is what I'll attune their attention to whatever I'm trying to get them to do. And we'll work through it as a team. But yeah, you're right. Like, I could make the game more specific to force that behavior, or I could guide them towards that behavior with my words and actions.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think one really important statement within all of this is just, it depends, right? Because it does depend. And I think people want to go one way or the other and pretend like it doesn't depend. But, I think it's good to be open-minded. What else was I going to say? Yeah, Mike, did you have much success using that overtie? I know you liked it when you did it statically for those couple of minutes.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Voice
Sorry.
is gone.
Yeah. I had a lot of success, and I can honestly say I would never have figured that out on my own, doing it a million times, because it was almost an awkward move for me at first. But once I repped it, and then I hit it all that night standing up, and I'm no wrestler by any means. I'm a shitty wrestler. I'm just starting. I would not have figured that out, I don't think, at all. No, I don't think I can honestly say I wouldn't, yeah.
Yeah, Nikki liked it a lot too, and she said the same thing, that she wouldn't have figured it out or thought of it. And I had the same experience, which really showed me that there is an argument to be made for showing movement solutions, because I haven't learned something new in a while before that, and I don't mean to sound that conceited or whatever like that. I don't know, just nothing's really stood out to me to kind of learn. But nowadays, I do learn the most from seeing other people do stuff and learning from them. And I think that I wouldn't have tried. I wouldn't have been as motivated to try it if I didn't do those static reps first. So I think that the static reps still had a little bit of value. Where it's like, obviously you don't need to static rep that for like 10, 15 minutes. But I think a couple times, like spending a minute or two on it, it clearly had value for us. Not that it's going to have value in every room. It depends on your goals, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, because it's just weird to me when people say it has absolutely no benefit, which I'm not sure that's true. But yeah,
I like to be shown things. You know, I don't want to spend 45 minutes trying to figure something out. Sometimes I'm old. I'm a hobbyist. I have other shit to do and think about sometimes, and I would rather you just show me this is a solution that you can take, and here's another solution you can take, or I'll figure it out on my own too. But I like to have the option that I can go to something that I've repped a few times.
Yeah, like I kind of view it as like, you know, some people might say that's a shortcut, and that shortcut's not going to help them in the end because they'll learn more from failure, which is, you know, there's probably some truth to that. But I think there's different ways of viewing efficiency. Like in a car, for example, what is efficiency? Is it saving gas? Like, is like a Prius efficient, or is like a Corvette efficient because you get there faster, right? It's like getting to your goal faster is efficient, but so is like conserving gas. There's two different ways to view it. So there's not a right or wrong answer. Some people want to go fast, and some people want to go, I don't know, save gas, I guess. I don't know how that analogy applies to jiu-jitsu.
It's like, what are you trying to do? Like, what is the goal of the room? I mean, again, like I've been very specific. My goal is not to make people who have all these moves and all these different things. I just want to make creative problem solvers. Now, I might hit a point where all my guys are really adept at solving problems. Then we have to start getting really advanced, and maybe I do have to start giving them more information as we go along. Again, this is something like I've been doing this for about a year and a half. My room is mostly like whites, blues, and a couple purple belts. I don't know personally how this translates to a room filled with brown and black belts and extremely skilled players. I think I know. I have an idea of what it might be like, but I don't have that experience yet. I'm hoping in the next 3 to 5 years I'm going to start finding out. But you know, I've talked to other people who've had this, and like I disagree with a lot of other eco people on something. I know there's a Discord for eco, and I don't think I'm particularly liked in there. But that's
just
fine.
One guy.
I'm sure
There's
there's
one
others.
guy. He doesn't like me either.
I'm very okay with not being a fan favorite. I don't really care if people like me or my opinions. I'm going to say what I believe, and if that offends people or they disagree, that's okay. I mean, you and I disagree on a lot of the little stuff about this eco, but that's okay because we both understand and respect that each other are just trying to be the best coaches we can be. I have no problem with someone like you who says, I tried eco. I still think there's some value in static drilling. There might be, man. I'm not a PhD. I'm not an expert. I'm not like a world authority. I know what seems to be working best in my room. That may change over time. Like you said, it depends. Now, I have a big problem with coaches who say the eco thing is bullshit. We should just be doing our static drills and then rolling or situational sparring, and there's no point ever testing out or trying. If you're not willing to at least experiment, you're doing your students a disservice.
Yeah, and those are probably like the old school coaches that either way they're screwed. I mean, they're not screwed, like they're messed up. Like what, like, you know, doing stupid warm ups like forever, and like you know, just that class sucks anyways. Like I think modern jiu-jitsu gyms like are, you know, already have been doing a more modern practice, and I think using ecological like CLA just makes it more modern. And but yeah, if someone doesn't want to fully commit to like being a purist, I think that's not the end of the world. And if I said anything that like I'm wrong about, if anyone listening, then yeah, I'm sorry. I'll figure it out, because I am still very much just figuring all this out. And like, I feel like the more that I learn, the better I can argue with the purists, because I don't want to be able to like, I want to be able to like make my point and yeah, not sound like an idiot, because I think some of these things, I don't know. I just think them. Like I don't see a realm where I don't want to show someone what I consider the proper way to do an arm in guillotine or an arm triangle or something like that, you know? And yeah, like, you said you don't have a PhD, and I don't either, right? And that's why, like, I'm listening to, again, Nicola Hodges from BC. I listened to her podcast on the Primal MMA podcast. I listened to it like freaking, like, I don't know, 5 times, because it was like validating to hear someone that's a PhD and specializes and researches motor learning say that, that the research isn't there to go 100% like, this is the way, and then there's no value in other stuff, because I feel like this is what people are saying, like other people like within the community, like they're trying to wrap their heads around it. And if they say anything negative, it's like, no, you're an idiot. But like, no, there's PhDs saying, yeah, there's some value in demonstration. And like what she said too, which I liked, was like ecological dynamics. It fits in really well with like certain activities, but then like others, it might be good to explore other ways, which that's not the exact quote. I don't want to quote her like wrong, but which I kind of agree to. I think things that are highly variable, it's great to do like approach it from a ecological mindset, but things that are more like closed, I think the details matter, and being told like what to do and stuff like that matters. And it was kind of validating to hear her say something pretty similar to that.
No, I definitely think like that's accurate. And like anything, there's going to be people who believe things one way or another, and you'll never convince them no matter how good your argument is. There's going to be people for that with IP, people for that with ecological dynamics. And the thing about human movement and human learning is it's an extremely complex topic. I mean, humans are not simple creatures. I don't know if there'll ever be 100% consensus on how things, I mean, like, not to get weirdly scientific and stuff, but like we really don't even understand a lot of how human brains work and thoughts and consciousness and what this stuff is. So it's kind of bold for anyone to say 100% we understand how humans learn, and there is no doubt and no room for, questions or interpretation. Like, we're complex beings, man. It's very hard for science to prove one way or another, and my personal opinion is I don't think we ever will. The best we can do as, again, people who aren't like pursuing this for academic purposes, like as coaches, is what is the leading consensus? What is the best information available? How can I take that information and use as a framework to build a more effective practice? And that's going to take trial and error. That's going to take failure. That's going to take, swinging too far one way and then having to come back. But that's the learning process. And I think most good gyms, if your students believe in you and you're like, hey, I want to be the best coach I can be, your students believe that. If you're like, I'm going to try this, we're going to figure it out. We'll go from here. We're going to learn together. Like when I first started doing the games and stuff, like I'm really good at teaching techniques statically. I'm actually like really good at it. It's one of my best skills. I can do that no problem. It's super easy for me. But when I first started doing the games, it was awkward, man. Like the reason I'm offering to help people on Instagram now is because I went through a year of this shit where it was super awkward. It was hard to get the behaviors I wanted. It was hard to explain what I was trying to explain. It was hard to explain positions or goals or tasks without using language that was already understood by me, but isn't understood by other people. So I want to help people kind of skip that process if I can. But like, it's hard, man. It takes failure. And I screwed up a lot of games. I had a lot of classes where I went home at night and I'm like, fuck, that was a shitty class, man. I really screwed that up. I hope my students don't all quit. But they knew, like, he's getting better at this. He's learning as we're learning. So we grow as a team. And I'm trying something new. I might be wrong. I might change my mind later. Like, you tried something, you decided you're going to move and shift your practice. Next month, you might shift it a little bit more one way or another or back, and that might continue until you find the right balance. But that's what learning is. It's like jiu-jitsu, man. People try a move and it didn't work. They try something else, it doesn't work, and you keep trying different stuff until you get the right result. So, like, that's learning.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's exactly it. Like, I'm keeping I'm open-minded that I might change. I probably will change like how I do things next month and the next month after, kind of go back and forth till I figure out what I want. And I think the most important thing for all coaches to take away from like the ecological movement is like learn how people learn, and then apply that to your practice. Like, you don't have to do anything the way you don't want to do it, but understanding how people learn is important. And as a coach, I think it's their responsibility, it's their job to understand how people learn, and not just because they're good at jiu-jitsu can they assume that they're done learning of how to be a good coach. Understanding how people learn is a big part of that. So,
I mean, I don't want to go too off like in the weeds and keep us too long, but like this is a little pet peeve of mine is you'll see people who train for years, and then one day they start teaching classes and they go, oh yeah, I'm a coach now. It's like, what changed? Why are you a coach now? What qualified you to be a coach? Did you do any research on how to coach? Did you do any research on how humans learned? Did you find, or were you just a guy who did jiu-jitsu and then was like, oh yeah, I can explain to people what I did and that makes me a coach? Well, not really. That just makes you a guy who did jiu-jitsu and doesn't make you a coach. Any other subject, like if you want to be a teacher for grade school, you have to go get a certification. If you want to be a college professor, like you have to hit a minimum level of, you know, knowledge on that subject, and you have to have these qualifications on how to teach people how to do things. Like we have school to teach teachers how to do it, and now you don't have that with sports, but like to me, if you want to call yourself a coach, like you said, you've got to look into how do people learn? How do I teach? Whether you choose an IP method or an ecological method or some sort, anywhere in between on that spectrum, you should at least do your due diligence and figure out what you're trying to do and build a framework and a methodology and, you know, adapt as time goes on, keep up to date, talk to other coaches on how they're doing things. If you're just someone who, you know, was like, oh, I grappled for a while, I'm going to show other people how to grapple, but I'm not going to do any other homework on how to get better at doing this, you're not really a coach.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I also think that it's just an interesting thing because it kind of goes against eco in a way where like eco, you learn by doing, right? Where so like a pure like way to learn how to coach would be just do it and figure it out. But, you know, learning knowledge about eco and how people learn helps you translate that to coaching skills and have knowledge of it, which is which is the exact same thing as jiu-jitsu. So like, yeah,
you still got to practice. I mean, the information, the research is just attuning your intention, your attention to what you're trying to do, and you still have to practice. Though I'm not saying like for people out there, like you're not going to read a paper or a book and then instantly be a better coach. You're going to read a paper and a book. You're going to go into your room and you're going to try the ideas, and you're going to fail a bit. You're going to have successes and failures, but if you keep trying and keep practicing and actually learn from the things you screw up or the things you do right, you will get better at it, like any task.
Exactly. See, I think that knowledge about and knowledge of are both very important, which I think for, you know, same thing with movement solutions, but we can't go right back into that. No, we don't, yeah, because we already had that discussion, but I just think it's an interesting thing. So yeah, it was a great discussion about eco, and we'll probably do it again, but probably not right away. Cause like the more I learn, the more I can make better arguments and, just have a better discussion. So maybe in like a month from now or so, we'll come back to this, and it was great talking to you, Joey. Sorry, Mike, you didn't get to talk much.
It's all good.
But yeah, I guess that's the nature of like kind of like talking about coaching. It's like the coaches are going to kind of talk more, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I'm learning as I go.
Yeah, exactly. The eco way. So that's thanks for sticking around to the end of the podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let us know. If you have any criticisms, then just keep it to yourself. No, I'm just kidding. All right, see you guys.